That we are a little behind schedule, but we'll go ahead and get started with the committee meeting. First, I'd like to call up House Bill 1486, and I believe Colonel McDaniel is here with us today. Colonel, I thank you for coming, and he is going to take a few moments and come to the podium and explain the bill to us. Again, this is House Bill 1486. Excuse me, Colonel, turn your microphone, please.
How about now?
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. All right, let me start back over. This is a bill that we have worked on with Mississippi Veterans Affairs, Mississippi Truckers Association, as well as the Department of Public Safety. What the circumstance that we have is under the federal guidelines, there's a regulation that allows for members of the military to not have to duplicate on the state level certain test and other skills training once they do that on the federal level. The federal regulation is 49 CFR Part 383.77 that allows for a waiver of the knowledge test, driving skills test, passenger endorsement test, the tank test, and the hazardous materials test. Other states have also taken away this training, and basically what this bill allows is for us to not have a duplication of that. It saves time, it saves money for individuals, and it gets qualified members of the military on the roads with a commercial driver's license much faster.
Thank you. And at this point, I'd like to allow any committee members to ask questions on the bill. Do I have a motion?
Dodge sufficient do pass.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that bill will be reported. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you all for allowing me to come today.
All right, the next item that we will bring up today is House Bill 158. This is the off-road vehicle bill, and you've already seen this bill. We had a companion bill here in the Senate that passed with no dissenting votes. And just as a reminder, this bill raises the weight for recreational off-road vehicles from 2,000 pounds to 3,500 and the size from 65 inches to 75 inches. And it only applies to uses on public property. And I'm happy to answer any questions. All right, do I have a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that one will be reported. Now we'll move to House Bill 567, and I would like to recognize Senator Sparks to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. House Bill 567 addresses small municipalities who have a 2,000 person limit to run radar based on a census. We've had situations where in a subsequent census, they dip below that number, and then there becomes a question of whether or not they can continue to utilize equipment that they've purchased. This bill would allow that if there was a decrease below 2,000, but not less than 1,500, that they could continue utilizing the equipment that they had come into the use of by having the proper population count. One of the biggest issues this past census is between COVID and other concerns. A lot of our areas, we don't filled the census out well, and it simply allows for a municipality to continue to use the equipment they have utilized in the past. I would yield any questions, Madam Chairman.
All right, are there any questions on the bill? Senator Delano.
Oh, there it is. Senator, how many jurisdictions will this impact?
I know of two. You're talking about municipalities, rather?
Mhm.
I know of two, possibly three. I don't know if there are more than that, but I know particularly of two or three.
This has definitely been an issue in the past, and there is no reverse repealer in it. Oh, yeah, there is no reverse repealer in this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair.
Senator Thomas for a question. Thompson, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Senator Sparks, is this going to allow any new municipalities to operate radar?
No, this does not open up to anyone to utilize radar except under existing laws. This is when people prior qualified but fell slightly below the threshold, not to be terminated from using it as long as they've not fallen significantly below that threshold.
So no new cities or municipalities will be running radar. This is
Other than under existing law.
under existing law.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, sir, Senator.
Senator Sparks, there you are. So does this impact the use by sheriffs and county officials to be able to use radar?
No, sir. This only
So
addresses
municipalities.
existing municipalities under existing law.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? No. All right, that bill will be reported. The ayes have it. Thank you. The next item on today's agenda, House Bill 971. I'm going to call on Commissioner Tyndall to come up and talk to us about this bill for the Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, no, I've watched you in action. So one of the things that immediately came to our attention when I first got to the Department of Public Safety, we were getting a lot of calls from folks that had had their CDL license basically revoked unbeknownst to them because they did not complete their medical waiver. And that was a change in some of the regs that came along about 4 or 5 years ago where you had to annually submit your medical waiver and you did it online. The thing is they would keep their license and it would still be a CDL and it wouldn't have expired for another 2 or 3 years. But it had been revoked, again, unbeknownst to them. They were getting paperwork that led them to believe that their license had not been, or their CDL had not been revoked. What this bill would do, and it would be in compliance with the federal law, would allow us to extend the time from, I think it's 18 months now, up to 60 months, which is the period of time for the CDL, so that if somebody did miss that medical waiver, they could come in and basically resubmit it and get their CDL reactivated so they can get back on the road and start driving without any interruption. So it would give them up to 60 months to basically clear up the medical waiver issue and get their CDL reinstated for any reason. With the medical waiver, once they got that right, I mean, they're still going to have to go to the doctor, get the medical waiver and show that they're able to drive their commercial vehicles. And so the other part of the bill deals with the digital wallet. And that is something with mobile ID that y'all passed a couple of years ago. Came to my attention in some discussions is the ability to have, so similar to what Louisiana has, a Louisiana wallet, where we can coordinate with other state agencies so that all your state credentials will be able to be held in one app versus 15 different agencies having 15 different apps to hold all your different credentials. So for example, you'd be able to put your mobile ID in there. If you have a hunting license, we could coordinate with wildlife and fisheries so that that would be included in that Mississippi wallet. If you have a bar license, you could include that. If you have a realtor's license, you could include that. So any state credentials could be held in one app on your phone and what would be essentially a Mississippi wallet. It makes DPS kind of the lead on coordinating that amongst different agencies. One of the things that I've learned as I've kind of dove into mobile ID and these different wallets is they're becoming more and more prevalent. And we think it's a good opportunity, instead of having 15 different agencies doing 15 different apps, have one app for all Mississippi credentials, and it would be a Mississippi wallet.
And Commissioner, you said other states they have a similar system for IDs?
They do. Louisiana has what's called Louisiana Wallet. We've met with the folks that do that. Florida has a similar thing. And it would be something that we'd have to coordinate with ITS and actually put out for proposals. A lot of these companies don't do it at any cost to the state, but if you want to use this digital wallet, it would be something like in Louisiana, the individuals pay, I want to say it's $6 for a 5-year subscription. So.
All right, any members have questions? Senator Whaley.
Thank you. Commissioner, one quick question, and I think the bill pretty much does what I'm wanting it to do. And I've had discussions with you on this too. Over the last 2 years, the need for truck drivers is grown substantially. And I think that's a very important thing. But under this bill, if someone in the past has let their CDL license go, is it only for the medical card, or what if they just decided they wanted to go back to a regular driver's license? Would they still have to go back through the entire process? Or
No, they would have up to 60 months without having to go and take that class. Because now if it gets revoked, especially with the change that we all are aware of that occurred about 2 weeks ago, in order to get a CDL, you got to go to a truck driving school. So if you let it expire or your medical card had you revoked and it had been more than 18 months, then you'd have to go back and take that entire course again. So this would give them up to 60 months without having to take that course again.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
I believe Senator Bryan had a question.
Commissioner, I think you and I had a conversation about a situation I had involving this shortly after you became commissioner.
The DUIs?
The commercial driver's license, which had expired, and the guy didn't know it had expired.
Yes.
And so based on your comments, apparently there were other people that had similar problems.
Yes. I mean, all over the
So
state.
you're not doing this just for me.
Not just for you. I get calls from Senator Wicker's office. I get calls from you. I get calls from a lot of different legislators with this issue.
Well,
But I would do it just
I'm
for
gonna
you.
call up my constituent and tell him you did it just for me. So don't.
I would do it just for you. I promise.
But my actual question about section 1 and section 1 only is this. I don't think section 1 deals with any other agency or anything else. This is just something that y'all would do internally.
Yes.
So it seems to me that we should make section 1 effective from and after passage.
I think that'd be wonderful.
If,
I would support that amendment, Senator Bryan, if you'd like to offer that.
I move to make section 1 effective from and after passage.
All right, all in favor of that amendment? Any opposed? All right, that amendment passes.
And as far as section 2 is concerned, I realize other agencies might have some interest in this, but the individual who's standing in front of me is the head of the Department of Public Safety. So for the moment, I'm on his side.
Thank you, Senator Bryan. All right, Senator Moran.
One quick question. I'm getting hit with this back at home, and I'm sure I can't be the only one in here. And when the guy hemmed me up, good friend of mine, he's got a big trucking company there, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. But when you referred to a couple of weeks ago, one Friday afternoon, there was so many vehicles on both sides of the roads, they had to have a deputy there to have the traffic coming back and forth. And I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, you do a fantastic job with driver's license places now, but it was at that point one time, but now when you see 100 vehicles there, you're like, something's going on. Come to find out that following Monday, that new rule went into place that you had to go to a driving school. So everybody was in there trying to get their license either renewed or get it instated. Is this a federal law? Is this a state law? Because I'm getting hit with these questions and I just need some answers, please.
It's a federal regulation that starting on that Monday, I can't remember the exact date, in order to get a CDL, you had to take a course. And so you had to go and enroll in one of the truck driving schools or.
Guys telling me
something.
10 weeks. Does that sound?
And,
And I
and,
don't
a few,
have a clue.
and a couple $1,000s. It's
Okay.
not cheap. So it's something that obviously everybody was going up there trying to take their CDL. So if they passed it, they could get it. So that was a federal regulation. On our part, we did a poor job anticipating the number of people that would be trying to get in there on Friday. And there were a lot of folks trying to get their CDLs.
So this is federal. There's nothing we did to, and put it in place. And that's what I told him. I said, I think it's federal. And he said, y'all passed it too. I don't remember that, but anyway, thank you very much.
Senator Horn, you got a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, if we pass this bill, for those folks who've been caught up previously, how are they impacted? Will this grandfather them in, or will they have to go back and go through the process?
We believe because it's 60 months, it will put them in the time frame where we could get them reinstated without them having to take those courses again.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Younger.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for being here. Our farmers are still exempt on hauling their grain to the elevators without a CDL, aren't they?
If you say so, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know.
Well, let's just say they are.
Okay. I can find out for you, just for you though.
I believe Senator Delano had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you very much for reporting or coming in and talking to us about this. Going to section 2. I know the answer is this, but I just want to state it real and be clear about it. There's no mandate for anyone to download the digital app, correct?
That's correct.
And if there were to be at some future date where we decided that we wanted to go to a digital format, there would have to be a legislative action taken for that to occur, correct?
That is correct.
You could not do that unilaterally.
I could not.
Okay. This is also going to be the platform that we will be able to use for say, a gaming permit license could be housed or reside on here as well, correct?
That would be the ultimate goal, yes.
Okay, and then you could also have a vaccine card that could be in the future added to the app as well, correct?
That's correct. If we could be coordinated with the Department of Health, and again, that would be something absolutely voluntary that you would not have to have. I can tell you Louisiana already does that with Louisiana Wallet. You can maintain a copy of your vaccination card in there if you choose.
Okay, but again, this is not a mandate by the legislature for someone to carry this app, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we will not be accused of opening the door for a vaccine passport, correct?
Well, Senator, I think if you're accused of that, you can absolutely 100% unequivocally deny that that's what it is.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we understood that this is not a mandate for us to have those out because I want the public to be able to use this app. I think it's going to be a great addition.
And we got a lot of questions about it. Originally, when we were trying to coordinate with the Department of Health, I got a lot of personal questions about that. And again, it would not and is not a mandate. And that is something that would absolutely be up to the individuals.
It's a great bill. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? As amended. That is the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That bill will be reported. All right, the next bill on the agenda is House Bill 1073. And I'd like to recognize Senator Williams to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. House Bill 1073 is really just some conforming language. As I read it, basically what it does as it relates to the design of bridges and culverts on public roads. In the current statute, it basically has specifics as to widths of things. What it does is changes it to conform to the codes, which would allow us if something changes mid-session or mid-year, we're not in session, we've got to come back because it's codified and change it. It would allow them to basically change on the fly and follow the codes, which would usually be the best practices. In short, that's what the bill does. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Questions on the bill? Yes, ma'am.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you're recognized.
Thank you. So are we saying that if mid-session federal regulation changes some standard that the state would automatically conform? Is that what we're saying?
Not necessarily. The AASHTO, which is American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, that's kind of what we look at, to look at that standard. It would allow them to adopt to that standard.
Without legislative approval at the time the change took place? Is that, we're just giving them the authority to?
Instead of the statute dictating the design parameters, what we're doing is allowing the people that do the codes to dictate that.
Okay, I guess a little bit of my concern would be, I've got a couple of really good road builders in my district, and my father and I are also in the earth moving and contracting business, and we do a lot with culverts. We try to stay away from roads, but I'm really familiar with the process. I know one of the number one complaints that we hear, and I'm sure road builders is here, is this constantly moving target where we're changing sizes, dimensions, widths, specifications. Is there anything in this bill that would make it more difficult?
No, ma'am. Well, not the way I read it, I don't think so. Like, for instance, in line 9, we struck out be not less than, and we added conform to the design standards in effect at the time of design. To me, it opens up a little bit more flexible way to do it. From an engineering perspective, if we've got a static, 16-foot culvert and the design standards changed to an 18, if it's in statute, we can't have that flexibility to adapt to that new standard.
Sure, I understand that. And there again, just being cautious. I mean,
No, I understand.
Does road builders support this bill?
I haven't spoken
do
with
we
you
know that?
specifically on this, but we can certainly have that conversation if you'd like to help us keep it moving.
Yes.
Before we take this up on the floor, happy to work with you and to make sure all of your questions are answered.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions on the bill? Is there a motion? All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right, that bill will be reported. Next, we've got House Bill 1185. This bill authorizes counties and the Mississippi Transportation Commission to enter into contract for maintenance if they choose to. This passed the House with no dissenting votes, and you will see the language change on line 325 of the bill. Simply gives the commission the authority to contract with any county if the county chooses to enter such contracts to perform any maintenance on the state highways, interstate highways within that county and any right of way to such highways. Happy to answer any questions on the bill. Do I have? I've got a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That will be reported. Next, we've got House Bill 1485. This simply extends the repealer on the harvest permit to 2025. If there are no questions, do I hear a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That will be reported. Last item on today's agenda is Mr. Brad White of Madison, Executive Director of Mississippi Department of Transportation. Mr. White, if you'd like to come up and take the podium. We appreciate him coming today, and I just want Mr. White to share a little bit with us about his tenure there at MDOT for the last 8 months, how things have been going and sort of the vision for the agency. Anything else you'd like the committee to know?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As most of you know, I'm not new to MDOT. One of my first jobs in government was about 25 years ago, going to work for Commissioner Dick Hall right after Governor Fordyce had appointed him there. In fact, John Horn was probably the first member of the legislature I ever had the opportunity and pleasure of working with on issues. And that was a very consequential time in my life for somebody that was in their early mid-20s to be around the caliber of people that work within the Department of Transportation. Very good, fine Christian folks that helped me grow as a person and then provided for me to go on and do other things. After serving as Governor Barber's party chairman, I was given the opportunity to be chief of staff for the Department of Audit, state director and chief of staff for Senator Thad Cochran, chief of staff for Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. I presided over the transition for Governor-elect Tate Reeves and then served as his chief of staff until this past summer when the Transportation Commission appointed me executive director. I've known most of you for a long time, and you know I'm a pretty simple guy, and my approach to things tend to be pretty simple. Where our focuses have been primarily have been on empowering the staff to do their job. As you know, I'm not an engineer. I try to be the director when I go into the office, not the chief engineer or district engineer or the commission. Try to empower them, hire talented, good folks, equip them to do their job, ensure accountability, and then for the most part, get out of the way. Tried to improve communication. As Governor Barber used to say, this is a team sport. Being able to have an open line of communication with our local officials, with the governor's office and his staff, and most importantly, with those of you that work under the dome of the Capitol, I think was most important. And I think that we've been successful in opening those lines of communication, being able to ensure that we're all on the same page as we try to address transportation needs of your constituents and the taxpayers and people of this state. We've tried to focus on our funding. As all of you know, MDOT for the last several years has had a budget of about $1.2 billion. With the new infrastructure bill out of Washington, our budget would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.4 billion. With that money, we have about $4.5 to $5 billion worth of capacity projects that are identified needs around the state to address. We have an investment of the taxpayer was about $64 billion of preserving and maintaining around the state. And due to that, you know, I'm of the opinion that we must have a very deliberate and careful planning when we go into addressing the needs that we have around. It must be based on a fiscally sound budget, and we must preserve our commitment to protecting the existing investment that the taxpayers have. I want to commend the legislature and the steps that you've taken over the last few years to narrow that gap. ERBR, lottery, the electric and hybrid vehicle fees, gaming revenue, since 2018 total around $590 million that those programs have generated in addition to the fuel tax revenue that the department runs on. But we are a Department of Transportation, not the old highway department. To that end, I wanted to report to you that DOT's invested $173 million in the non-highway modes of transportation and public transit since 2005. And last year alone, through our Multimodal Transportation Improvement Fund, our $10 million investment leveraged an additional $250 million for our state, touching rail and ports and airports. But our final and most important focus that we've been looking at has been that of our staff around the department. Over the last 12 months, we've lost over 30 engineers. 20 years ago, when I worked at MDOT, if you went around the 10th floor, most of the tenure of the individuals that worked there, that ran all of our programs, our district engineers, division heads by and large, all had somewhere between the neighborhood of 30 and 35 years of service with the department. Today, in some cases, that's less than half of that. So we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. When the 87 four-lane program was passed, much of the pre-construction work that was done to bring those projects to fruition, we were able to do that in-house. If you gave us a program of that magnitude today, we would be ill-equipped to be able to do that in-house and would have to use consultants, which we believe increases the cost of that quite considerably. But that's not just with our engineers, it's with our maintenance techs, the people that I would refer to as our frontline workers. For the first time in a long time, we've got counties that do not have MDOT employees working in them. The reason that's important to you is when you call me with a problem that your constituents are having, our floating crews now that are going around tending to those types of needs are having to cover a much larger geographic area by virtue of not having enough people to direct to that work and to commit to that type of work. So it's had a huge impact on all of those. But I'm, in the same way with funding, I'm happy to report to you, though, that I do believe that SEC Squared is going to help us. I believe that the commitment that we've had from the legislative leadership, the cooperation with ELBO and the State Personnel Board, we will be able to make and take steps toward rectifying that and trying to pay a fair wage to our people so we can maintain the people we've got and recruit good people. When I graduated high school, my grandmother was giving me advice, telling me that, go do what makes you happy. Money won't make you happy. When she walked out of the room, my grandfather, who I didn't think was listening to us, put his paper down and said, your grandmother's right. Money won't make you happy, but the lack of it will damn sure make you miserable. Go do what you can pay your bills with. And that's kind of the same position that we find ourselves in as an agency, but more importantly with our employees. They want to reach the American dream just like all of us. And I believe that it's very important that we ensure that they're being paid the fair wage, that we can be sure that the agency is equipped to do the task and the mission that you've given us. But with that, Madam Chairman, that's pretty much an overview of who I am and what we're looking at. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Yes, sir. Senator Carter.
Mr. White, I'm looking through this peer report and I'm looking through the business and professional experience. And it's quite impressive, all these chief of staff positions that you've had. The one thing that concerns me is you've probably been driven around quite a bit in this position. So being the executive director of highways and transportation, I think requires superior driving skills. So my question to you would be, would you consider going to trooper school?
No.
That's all I've got, Madam Chairman.
Other questions by members? Yes, ma'am. Senator Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. White, I know that Transportation Secretary Buttigieg has indicated that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that it should be more equitable and that there should be investments in communities that have had a history of inequity in America. And so I was wondering what position MDOT is taking toward the federal dollars as it relates to what the Transportation Secretary has stated as a goal.
Well, obviously, we will adhere to all the federal guidelines and restrictions they place on that, the way that they direct us in which to spend the money. We certainly will adhere to that. I'm of the opinion that the best thing we can do for the taxpayers of the state is to be very data-driven in what we do, taking into account things not just like traffic volume, but also economic development opportunities, safety factors, and other things like that that should be given every consideration into how we spend our money. And I think if we follow where the needs are, that the result of that will be equitable spending of that money and putting it where it is. One of the problems we ran into, maybe the only negative that you could give to the 87 4-lane program, was politics drove where those highways were built by and large. And as a result, it was a very positive program, but we do have a few 4-lane highways that maybe don't, to date, have not reached the criteria under the legislature's Vision 21 program to have been 4-laned. The legislature, in its wisdom, moved away from that with the Vision 21 law, which applied some data-driven criteria to what the commission must follow in order to place projects on the capacity list, in order to prioritize any new construction of that nature. And you also gave the commission the ability to deviate from that criteria in situations like potential economic development or safety or other factors that maybe aren't driven by traffic alone. So I think that the more that we as a department can move in that direction and deal with the needs as they present themselves, follow the facts, I think the better off we will be. And I think as a result of that, we will consequentially be in keeping with what the secretary would like to see done.
Thank you, Senator Blackman. Senator Horn for a question.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. White, I know that in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was just passed by Congress, there is a reference to the latitude that highway systems will have to deal with off-system funding. Can you talk a little bit about what is off-system funding and what your position is regarding use of those resources in that way?
I think you're talking about the new bridge program that was part of the infrastructure bill. It's somewhere around 200 something million dollars. The only guidelines we've received from Federal Highway to date is that we can anticipate about 15% of that must be spent on off-system of roads or bridges.
And how would you define off-system?
An example of one of those may be a county road that crosses an interstate, where there would be an overpass over the interstate and it's a county road. I think the commission, would have the authority if they wanted to go beyond that. Off-system can be as far off as they may want it to be. We haven't gotten all of the guidelines though from the infrastructure. Keep in mind right now, Federal Highway is yet to return to their offices all the way because of the continuing resolution that they're under. So we will be able to answer in greater detail questions like that as soon as we receive all the guidelines that we're still waiting on how the new programs would work, what we would be allowed to do, how we would spend the money, and et cetera.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions by members? All right, thank you, Director White. Before we actually bring this up for a vote, Commissioner Simmons is requested to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Madam Chairman, I should have gone to your school when I was being the chairman of this committee. You moved things through much smoother than I was ever able to do so. So my hats off to you. Thank you. Let me just say to the committee that I stand before you to recommend and support the commission position. And I speak for all three commissioners who brought Brad in. We were very fortunate to get him falling off of the chiefs of staff tree, having been the chief of staff for the governor, Senator Cochran and Senator Hyde-Smith. And we brought him into our system. And he has been doing a great job of that. So thank you for your support of him. We do encourage you to confirm him. But in doing that, we also encourage you to do the things that he's asking of you and that we have asking of you, and that's give us more money. Thanks for the money that you seem to be sending us. But we do need recurring dollars also. So thank you. And once again, we are highly in favor and supportive of Brad White as our CEO.
All right, do I have a motion? All in favor? Excuse me. The motion is that we do advise and consent. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Do I have a motion to rise and report? Thank you.